invite my speakers to the stage now. We have with us, first of all, Alexander Bach. He's head of the Division Water Risk Management at the Ministry of Energy Transition, Climate Protection, Environment and Nature in the great state of Schleswig-Holstein. We also have with us Dr. Anita Künitzer. Sit wherever you want to. She's a scientific advisor, senior scientific advisor at the German Environment Agency, and Professor Jacek Bełdowski, head of laboratory at the Institute of Oceanology, PAS. Good to see you both again. Not sure if we saw each other last year or not. Were you here? Yeah, sure. Okay, great. So we're getting back together, right? 4 years later to talk about squaring the circle of protecting the environment and having a sustainable economic model for doing that when it comes to clearing munitions. It would be nice if there were musicians. We want to keep the musicians and clear the munitions. Where are the musicians? Maybe we'll see how that networking session turns out later on. Anyway, this panel is going to unfold just like the previous one did. We're going to have some brief statements from our distinguished panelists, and well, not that brief, but brief enough, right? Try to keep it contained as much as you can to 7 to 9 minutes. That'd be great. And then we'll have a little discussion, and then we'll bring in your questions from the floor, which are so much more interesting and well-informed than mine. So without further ado, I'm just going to start with Alexander Bach. Go right ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, if you have a look at the last years, beginning at the end of the war, we'll see a lot of changes of perspective. In the first years after the war, the first perspective was, or the first priority was to clean up shipping lanes, to start commerce again, and to keep Germany as a commerce partner. Some years later, the munitions underwater were forgotten, maybe. They weren't seen. There was a big blue water bottle over it, and no one has the possibility to reach it. And the environmental issue was never been addressed. In the mid-90s, Helcom published some reports regarding chemical munitions. And I think that was the starting point to talk also about environmental issues regarding the ammunition underwater. And in the early 2000s, 2010, 2011, a cross-administrational group, working group in Germany published a report about the dumped munition in the German waters. And within 1,100 pages of scientific results and archive results, they explained where the ammunition is in German waters and what it harms to the environment. I think this was the starting point for different projects also in the scientific area. And in 2015, I think it was when here in Schleswig-Holstein the first projects started, and the results were given how big the impact of dumped munition and the release of TNT out of the munition is harming our environment. The scientists started to research in the water, in the fauna, and they showed us that it is time to start action. But it took again some 10 years to go into action and to start the immediate program, as we heard in the first panel. But I think it was a good signal to have the results of the scientists, because I don't think that without these results we will be at that point that we are now. For the future, I think we need a plan. We don't have to balance whether it should be economic issue or an environmental issue. I think we have to look at both. We have to keep it environmental sustainable as well as economic sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, here we go. A useful overview of the evolution of our consciousness and awareness of what's going on down there, and a reminder that it's environmental and economic sustainability are two sides of the same coin, indeed. Okay, Anita.
Hello, good afternoon. I have a small presentation, and you will see that the slides will a bit overlap with the toxicological presentation that Eddie Maser gave this morning. So, and I'm from the German Environment Agency, so I will talk about the environment or focus on the environmental concerns, and we just had a 50 years anniversary of our agency. Oh, is this changing? Ah,
there we go.
okay, good.
Is it
So-
the right? Yeah.
So that's the first slide. So the usual practice, how oxos are remediated, is blast in place. And this slide was already shown this morning by Eddie Maser. Blast in place is no option because for the one reason, it creates this shock wave that the lady from the ministry mentioned in her talk, but also high order or low order detonations, blast in place. They don't burn the munition compounds completely, but distribute them in the environment. So high order detonations distribute a bit of munition compounds, low order detonations distribute more munition compounds into the environment, and we don't want to have them in the environment. There might be some areas where blast in place has to happen because the items cannot be moved, but it should not be the general practice. And in the Monimap project, we have checked how the different countries around the Baltic Sea do the remediation of the munition, and usually it's blast in place. So do I have to point somewhere else that it is?
I don't know. I'm really sorry about that.
Now. So this is the next slide. Eddie Maser has also shown this. In Germany, we have this environmental specimen bank where mussels, blue mussels, are collected in two sites in the North Sea and one site in the Baltic Sea. So it's mixed samples every year, deep frozen, cryo-frozen. So for later analysis, we analyze that for contaminants that could not be analyzed before. And we did this, Eddie Maser's group did this for the munition compounds, TNT, ADNT, and so on. So these ring structures are the most toxic ones. And you can see that in all three locations, there were no munition compounds in the first decade. In the second decade, some munition compounds could be measured, and then in the last decade, it's visible everywhere, but it's still very low concentrations. So the red line is the limit of detection. That means the munition compounds cannot be quantified yet, the concentrations, but it's there. And this morning it was not clear if this time series will be continued. Yes, so the mussels are being sampled every year. They are cryo-frozen. And then at a certain stage, I guess Eddie Maser will get a contract with his team to analyze the samples.
By the way, and this is for anyone who's doing a presentation today, the large button in the middle, I'm told, is the one that should be pressed to make it go forward, but you seem to be pressing that and nothing's happening. Is that right?
I'm pressing the large button
Oh, there we go.
all the time. Okay, maybe I have to press harder.
Sorry, just one more note on that. Again, I'm really sorry about this, even though I'm not really responsible for it, but I have just been told in my ear that if you say next slide, they have access to it, back there.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
So we keep
option.
this for the moment.
My apologies.
Because we try to answer the question also if there is bioaccumulation of munition compounds in the food chain. And munition compounds, we abbreviate MC. Some say energetic compounds, EC. I learned during lunch that MC can also be maritime committee and so on. So just when we use these abbreviations, EC, MC, are the munition compounds, which is TNT and the other toxic substances. So this analysis was again done by Eddie Maser and his team. And what was found, that the munition compounds were found in fish, but not in eider ducks and also not in the marine mammals. So that means the typical bioaccumulation that we know from lipid substances like PCBs, that's not happening there with munition compounds, but still we find them in the food chain. So that means there is another way that it gets into the body of the organisms. So then in fish bile and fish fillet, the munition compounds were found. It's TNT were more in the fillet, and in the bile it's more than the degradation products, but which are nearly as toxic as TNT is. And the concentrations are about 4 nanogram per gram dry weight. Just remember this because we come back to this point. So next slide, please. Yes. So what does it mean, 4 nanogram per gram? Is it dangerous? Is it not dangerous? So for that, we do toxicity tests. Toxicity tests are standardized. Industry has to do it if they want to bring a new chemical to the market. They have to provide these toxicity tests. And they are standardized OECD toxicity tests. We have done them in our laboratory at the German Environment Agency with diatoms. Diatoms are marine algae, so it's the best if we want to protect the marine environment to use also marine organisms. And then we used the literature. What you see on the right-hand upper side is a species sensitivity curve from Lotufo. The arrows show where our toxicity values are within this curve. So at the very bottom, that means our 2 diatoms are very sensitive. And then based on this toxicity curve, we have developed an environmental quality standard as it is used under the Water Framework Directive and also under the Marine Strategy Framework Directive. For the moment, there is not such a standard under these 2 directives, but we have used the guidance document number 27 to derive this standard. And we could derive it for concentrations in water and concentrations in organisms. And so I won't go into the detail. It's a maximum value, a mean annual value. But for biota, so fish or mussels, it is 4.1 microgram per kilogram wet weight. So 4, we heard before, that was the maximum in fish flesh, in fish muscle, was 4 nanogram per gram, which is 4 microgram per kilogram. But it was dry weight, and here we have wet weight. And can you go back the slide, 1 slide back? Exactly. So I have recalculated there this 4 nanogram per gram dry weight into wet weight. Then it's only 0.8 microgram per kilogram. So we are still below this environmental quality standard. We hope that this environmental quality standard will be used in legislation, in national, in German legislation, and also from the HELCOM and OSPAR, from the regional sea conventions. Can you go 2 slides further? Yes, so that's the second last slide. So what should be done? So what we think, as we have these concentrations in German waters, but also internationally, we can measure it nearly everywhere. We would need national surveillance monitorings of the dumping areas. It's being diluted in the water, so it's better to monitor at the dumping areas and also at the potentially polluting wrecks. We have just heard 2 weeks ago from Belgium that they have found very high concentrations across a wreck. I think still some intercalibration exercise needs to happen to see if these values are reliable. But if they are reliable, that's really shocking high concentrations. Within the regional sea conventions, OSPAR and HELCOM, monitoring guidelines, reporting guidelines, and assessment procedures should be standardized so that not every country is doing their own. It should be done in a harmonized way at the regional level. There are also already attempts in it, Remarco project, and also the Munimap project. And then at such spots, remediation measures should happen. We have heard about the immediate action program today, but there are these hotspots not only in German waters, and also when you look at the map, which I have copied from the website from the Federal Ministry of Environment, it shows where the flags are, it shows the dumping areas, but the distribution is not equal. When you look at the bottom graphic, this is the side of the Baltic Sea, and you see the red dots. These are TNT measurements from GeoMar in water, and it shows that comparably higher concentrations are along the coast of Schleswig-Holstein than in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, and the places where the measurements have been done. And we need, Andreas Röpke said that we need a plan, what to do first and what to tackle first. I agree, that needs to be done, and blast in place should be avoided. Should only be done if it's really necessary, and if it's really necessary, a bubble curtain should be used. That makes it more expensive, but a bubble curtain is important that the hearing of the seals and dolphins, harbor porpoise, is not damaged. Yeah, and then the last point is the legislation. We have already heard this morning that the legislation is made for security, for remediation of single objects. It is not made for removal of big amounts of dumped munition. And it's also not made for the marine environment. So we start in the Munimap project, we start looking into the legislation, what needs to be done, what are the gaps, and probably there is the need to bring the security law and the environmental law together in order to have the means to remove the munition in the way how Dieter Gudin has showed us this morning, so that there are no obstacles for the companies that will do the removal. And then the last word is, I think if the money will be provided by the parliaments, European Parliament, national parliaments, then industry will be active and things will happen. So that was, one slide more. That was then the last one. Yeah, And the European Commission has this European Ocean Pact. I think DG Mare person this morning mentioned it. And it has 6 strategic objectives. One is on maritime security and defense. And in the section protection critical maritime infrastructure, it is saying that UXO threatens the ecosystem, and a coordinated UXO removal strategy starting in the Baltic and North Sea and expanding to the Black Sea will utilize advanced detection and disposal technologies, and partnerships with HELCOM and other regional bodies will enhance implementation. So that means also on the European level, we are along the lines, but if the European level could also provide money for remediation, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Jacek.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Okay, I also have a short presentation. I will have a longer one during the scientific session. So this refers to the project I'm coordinating, the MuniMap, which Anita has mentioned, but generally regarding the problem of munition in the Baltic Sea, the problem exists, of course, for many years, and we started to discover the problem in the 1993 with HELCOM HEMU. But then it was just the analysis of existing documents provided by Baltic countries. So basically, it was a good story which were putting at ease concerned people in different countries. So only in early 2000s we started to learn what's really happening in the Baltic, and we've got several projects in which I have been a coordinator, and in several which I've been participating and cooperating with others. It actually started in 2004, but by that we've been concentrating on chemical munitions in the Baltic, and only gradually starting, I think, in 2016, in the time of modern program, we started to learn that actually conventional munitions are a bigger problem. It's just more of it, and their locations is less known than chemical munitions. We learned that actually corrosion rates in different places in the Baltic, if you average them, means that basically everything which was dumped in some kind of contemporary containers like barrels and such have already corroded, and it's basically just contaminated sediment. Whereas the aerial bombs will corrode about in 2025, so right now, and artillery shells something about the year 2100. So definitely those munitions which were dumped in the sea are being released to the water column or to the sediments, and will be released in the immediate future. We do not know the combined rate of the actual dispersion, but we know that the sediments are contaminated in those places, and to the extent of hundreds of meters up to a kilometer in measurable quantities. Even if we do not really know how many munitions are in the Baltic, the mechanisms to damage the environments are there. They corrode, they release their constituents, and they are obviously affecting the biota. This is like the combined fish disease index from our 3 projects done in the 2010 to 2019. And it's based on the analysis of roughly 20,000 cod samples during the monitoring cruises of Fortuna Institute. And it shows the fish disease index meaning like different fish, diseases, parasites, skeletal malformations, and things like that are higher in the places where munitions were dumped compared to other places, but not in every year, which means that the water movement in the Baltic is actually either spreading those munition constituents to other places or accumulating it if the water is stagnant. So it's not really a time bomb in the Baltic Sea, as journalists like to call it. It's a loaded gun in the Baltic Sea. It's like during all those projects, we have assessed that, okay, is it a gun? Yes. Is it working? Yes. Is it loaded? It is. Is the safety off? It is. So all the mechanisms to damage the environment on a really large scale are in place. We only do not know when it will happen and which area will be the target. Because it may be like the target will be some localized area, very deep, away from humans, and we will not see for many years, we'll only see the consequences. But definitely, we need to actually look into the problem. This is the schematic of the Munimap program. Anita told us a lot about policy, and you will hear during the scientific session in a few days all about research and assessment, and we already heard a lot about remediation. But I think what we are really missing at the moment is the monitoring, because without the monitoring, we do not know how much time do we have and do we have to react at all, because removing all of the munitions is impossible. Some of it are just constituents of contaminated sediments, and we have to live with that, like we live with the climate change. Some of it is not dangerous, and some of it is dangerous, and we only have to concentrate on removing that. I believe that the technology will progress, and if it will progress, the price will drop, as with every technology. If you start using it, you develop more cost-effective solutions, and it costs less. And I think this should be like, the remediation should be the everyday problem, like infrastructure upkeeping or building new infrastructure in Europe. It's co-financed by the European Union, so I think that the way forward would be to allow countries to apply for the co-financing from the European Commission if they wish to perform the remediation. And the decision whether to perform the remediation or not should be based on a sound environmental risk assessment. So I hope this will be the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the big question that we start off with is, did the big button work for you? Well, it's one of those hit and miss things. You really don't know. Anyway, thank you. Thank you all. I'm going to open up the floor to questions pretty quickly, but first I'm going to put one, at least one, to the panel to start off with. And Alexander Bach, you're with the ministry, the Environment Ministry, I'll just keep it short, in this state, which, as we've heard, does have a pretty high concentration of munitions, unexploded munitions in the water, dangerous munitions, we assume much of it. And you just heard these presentations by scientists who have been monitoring that and reporting what's been going on. This is stuff maybe, I'm sure none of it's really new to you. You've been hearing it, but we're now with an audience who is focused on this problem. They've just heard it. I've heard it. You've heard it. What's your reaction to it, to what you just heard? Since you're in the policy community.
Yeah, I think it was a signal for us to start acting. And I think we should also try to focus not only on the pressure we have. This is important for us because the pressure is the driving motor, if you say so. But we also have to focus on the potential we have. We have an economic potential as the technique which is developed can also be brought to other nations. And if we have success in deleting the pollution which came from the ammunition, we can make a plan what to do with the free of munition areas. So we can give it back to the nature, to have, for example, protected areas for the nature where she can recover. We can also use it as an economic area. And I think we have to think about every part of the North Sea and the Baltic Sea, which area is better for recreation areas, for nature reservations, and which one is maybe the best place for economic use.
You were here 4 years ago. This is, you've watched this evolve, this space evolve in that time, and I'm sure before it as well. You began by saying just now that we should also look at the potential, not just the pressure. Do you see potential building for incentivizing, as we talked about in the first panel, for incentivizing dealing with this problem? From a technological point of view, from an economic point of view, because you said if the technology evolves, we might be able to sell it, to see a business model there, and then that will automatically bring more resources to bear.
Yeah, I think that is what was the intent of the immediate program of the federal government. And we heard it in the first panel also, we have to build up a market for that. And I think if the immediate program shows that it works, and that it works in an economic way and in a cost-effective way, then it could be the market for other countries. And I think the Baltic Sea, as a small ocean, can be the pilot region for that.
Thank you. I'm sure there might be some follow-up on that. Anita, I just want a short clarification on one point you made. It was really interesting. You were talking about the toxicity in the fish and how it's measured and what sort of standards there are for that. And what you raised the question, is it dangerous? And of course, that's what I think about too, as someone who loves to eat fish and spends a lot of time at the Baltic Sea. You said that in the end, you eventually said it's below environmental quality standards. How dangerous is this fish? Say if I went to Bornholm, went fishing, caught a dorsch, whatever that is in English. And I ate it. It's cod, exactly. Thank you. Apparently, there are different kinds of Baltic Sea cod, but anyway, one there where it looks like, as we heard from Jacek, that there's quite a bit of high concentration there, as we know. Would that be dangerous for me, do you think? Possibly?
If you catch a cod and you eat it...
off the coast of Bornholm. I've done this before, I'm just wondering.
Yeah, no. And you are still alive. So, also Eddie Maza has shown this morning, he did a calculation on another basis. So what I have showed, this environmental quality objective, that's being done on the environmental side. And he did the calculation to protect especially human health, but the outcome is the same because it's also based on the same data. So you can still eat the cod.
Because it's just below the threshold.
It is below the threshold, and the threshold is there in order to protect. So the legislation is complicated. So this is environmental legislation. We have also food safety legislation.
Yeah, exactly.
And they have their own guidelines how limit values are being developed. So we, from my agency, we had been in contact with the National Food Safety Agency. They are waiting on what we are doing to see how dangerous it is. At the moment, it's in Germany, in German waters, our measurements, it's still below the limit. So therefore, the Food Safety Agency also, they won't develop limit values, legal limit values at the moment. But what we heard from Belgium, and with these very high values, and if they are really confirmed, then that would be also an issue for the food safety agency.
I say that not just to, to scare people or because I'm worried that I'm going to die, a year earlier or something from eating too much cod from the Baltic, but there are huge industries that are dependent on this. There are food industries that have developed that when we're looking to incentivize getting rid of the munitions and doing something about the danger that it poses, this is a huge argument, I would think, that even if you get close to this threshold, this doesn't help sell fish, right? And there are people who are going to be deeply concerned about this in multiple countries. I'm just saying, I was just wondering about that. Thank you. Sorry.
No, we also
Sorry for
have
pushing
to
so hard.
consider aquaculture. We have
Yeah, exactly.
aquaculture for fish in Danish waters a lot. I was involved in developing the environmental guidelines for how to treat or not to treat the aquaculture. We have also mussel cultures, not in our waters, but in other countries, and they should not be placed close to dump sites. That's quite important, because it's a hotspot issue. So the water is diluting the concentrations, therefore I would use also for the monitoring, maybe for the surveillance monitoring concentrations in water, but else in biota or in sediment.
Thank you. And Jacek, on the, you said, okay, maybe the loaded gun metaphor is better than the ticking time bomb metaphor for describing where we are. Which I'll remember that, right? Because I'm the kind of guy, I'm the kind of broadcast journalist that would use the ticking time. I mean, many of my colleagues would write this for me, and I would come across this copy. So I know exactly what you're talking about. But that's, I think, a really useful point because it takes into account multiple factors, right? The gun being loaded, but when will the trigger be pulled, and what will happen? I found it really interesting the way you gave us a nice graph on the deterioration of these munitions and how they disperse. There's still big questions around that, of course, but how shifting waters can also, have an impact when it comes to location. But I'm wondering, some of the things, horribly toxic things, have already dissipated. That's already over. What was in the barrels, that is already been released, contaminating sediment that could be a kilometer wide. We really don't know. So you say there's really nothing that can be done with that. It's not feasible. Maybe is it dangerous though? Still, as it's lying there?
Well, it's like this, that unfortunately those compounds are being degraded to both non-toxic and even more toxic compounds. It's like 50-50, depending on environmental conditions. We are still trying to understand what's the connection with the climate change, because in some areas the climate change may actually promote more toxic components. In some areas it may promote more non-toxic. So that's what we're gonna still study, one of the mysteries to be solved. But, well, if you've got contaminated sediments in some places, usually with mustard gas, you can have like a big lumps without casing, open to environment, and the long-term source of pollution. With those, you could still do something if you are able to find them, which is not easy. And then you can encase them in some kind of container and take it out and transport it to the destruction facility. But of course, if those like lumps are broken into small pieces, yes, you've got contaminated sediments. You have to live with it. You cannot remove it. You just have to monitor the place. If the concentrations are not tolerable for the biota, then maybe you should introduce a fishing ban in this specific area and just exclude this area from the exploitation and also from offshore economy, because if you steer these contaminated sediments, they will be released to the water column. So it's like, well, that's the world we've built, and we have to adjust. It's like the war situation is not actually knowing the situation, because it's like the situation when you try not to learn something just in case it may be bad news is never a good situation, because it's better, well, the nature does not know the reward and punishment, it only knows the consequences. So it's like if you know the situation, you know the consequences, you know what to do.
So ignorance is not a virtue from in that respect. Said like a true scientist. Very good. No, thank you. Well, you can tell that I'm not an expert, right? I don't pretend to be an expert. I've learned a lot about this topic over the last few years, and it's been illuminating. I'm learning things here today. So instead of me asking non-expert questions here, let me turn it over to you in the room, who I'm sure have a lot better questions. I see one hand going up here in the front. We've now set up a microphone, so this is going to involve a little movement on your part. It's in this aisle right here. And if you could just proceed there, and identify yourself and direct your question to the panel.
Okay, thank you. I would like to bring another note to the fact of food safety. So we have the European Environmental Safety, European Food Authority, the EFSA. And I tried to convince them that we have a problem with munition in the sea since maybe 4 or 5 years, but they are very slow. And now it came to my mind why they are slow. So imagine you are industry and you would like to bring a new food stuff on the market. Then you have to follow all the rules and all the safety factors. So you have to look at the contamination with any compounds that are in, and you should be below this. So this is then the question of bringing something new on the market, a new food stuff on the market. But the munition is there since 80 years already on the market. And this is then the problem, because there's no industry being really interested to make then the research on safety issues. So this is then governmental work, or this is administrative work, but not industry. So we are lacking this. We are lacking the industry part of that. So the strong influence of the industry. So maybe we can convince the fisheries to be a driving force on this. But this is very it is not so easy, and this is why the process of getting food safety issues within munition in the sea is so slow.
Professor Mazza, thank you very much for that comment. Would anyone on the panel care to respond to that? Anything to say about that? You don't have to. We can collect some more questions. Go ahead, Anita.
Just in addition, so what I was referring to, this European agency is ECHA, which is in Helsinki, and they deal with new and old chemicals. They analyze the chemicals, but not specifically on food items. There is another agency, and I think you were referring to this other agency, that is dealing with food safety. And there it needs to be national delegations that are pushing for limit values. So it could be a German delegation or a Danish delegation or so to push that there needs to be a limit value. So industry is with ECHA, and this food safety agency that's controlled by the national governments.
Sounds like you and Professor Mazza may be able to follow this up at
the governmental procedures, yeah.
Okay, great. So, yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Also, very nice panel. My question is about the monitoring that was suggested. And,
just shortly introduce yourself.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Most of us maybe know you, but not everyone.
No. Thorsten Kiefer from JPI Oceans. Yes, so monitoring, I mean, I hear this a lot, and also from other communities, that monitoring is key, and I totally take it. There we do have, in particular for one European directive, the Marine Strategy Framework Directive, there's where we are obliged, or countries are obliged to have good environmental status. So that involves a lot of monitoring also. I do wonder, so my question is would that be enough? So let's say to just plug some sensors onto monitoring stations or monitoring program that monitors the good environmental status, or are you requiring something that is more dense and a kind of a grid or a dump site? And the other question is, so this Marine Strategy Framework Directive, it's actually rethought at the moment. So maybe there's an opportunity to really ask for monitoring of munition relevant compounds. Would you be able to say, this is exactly what we would like to measure to really have a good overview? Obviously not asking for everything possible to measure, but something realistic and specific. Thank you.
Okay, if I may start. Well, it's not just adding extra sensors to existing stations, because those existing stations may not be in the munition hotspots. For this type of monitoring, to check what's happening with munitions, you have to have monitoring stations in the hotspots. We are working on that right now, trying to include the manual in the HELCOM manual on monitoring. Regarding what you said, what to measure, we know that. We know that we are having lots of parameters which are related to munitions, and right now the MONIMAP project is working on narrowing it down to only some critical parameters to bring the cost down, because of course if you want to monitor everything, the costs would be crazy, but we have to nominate several chemical compounds which are critical, and several biomarkers which are more or less munition specific. Regarding the positioning of the sampling stations, we will postulate to place them in known munition hotspots which are of concern to a given nation, and keep those stations alive for as long as you are good with the trend that you are observing. If you are seeing the trend is decreasing, then it should be possible to remove this monitoring station or to decrease the frequency on which you visit this point. Yeah, Anita, you've got anything to add?
Yes, I agree, because with the project results, with a group of Eddie Maza that I showed in the beginning, we used samples from our national monitoring stations that are being used for the Water Framework Directive, 12 nautical miles, and also for the Marine Strategy Framework Directive. And we used the samples from mussels and from fish to analyze them for TNT and the metabolites. And in mussels, except for those from the German Environment Species Bank, we couldn't find TNT and the metabolites. We could only find them in the samples from the fish. So therefore, I agree with Jacek that the current monitoring stations should not be used. It should be hotspot monitoring stations close to the munition dump sites or close to the potentially polluting wrecks. That's important. And under the Water Framework Directive, we have two types of monitoring. One is a hotspot monitoring at one station time series, and another one is a surveillance monitoring. And the graphic in water from GEOMA that was on one of the last slides, that's providing a nice overview of where higher concentrations are. And then in those areas, I would say it will be good to have permanent monitoring stations. And it must not be too many. I mean, it depends also who can do then the analysis. I mean, in Germany, we have several organizations in every German Länder at the federal level, different organizations do the monitoring. So we would need a cost-efficient approach, maybe send all the samples to Eddie Maser, give him a small subcontract. This analysis is not so expensive. Because it's not so easy to do the analysis. Huh?
But this is really important, though, what we're talking about here, because we're talking about, regulation. It's not a directive, of course, in the EU terminology. It's not a regulation, but still, it leaves some room into how you implement it and achieve the standards they're looking for. But I thought, Anita, what you were saying about the need to bring legislation, security and environmental legislation into harmony, takes us also in that same space, the regulatory environment. Super important. Monitoring, critical. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead. Sure. And then we got one more question standing in line. Yeah.
Maybe just at one point, it's also important to have a goal where you want to go with the monitoring. It could be it could provide input to the maritime picture, so you know where the hotspots are if you do it European wide. But just to have a monitoring, I think it's too expensive to have a new monitoring strategy for just munition compounds. As the ministry said this morning, we have three crises: the climate crisis, the biodiversity crisis, and the pollution crisis. And even the pollution in the seas, in the European seas, is more than only ammunition. So that's hard to say for me, but it is. And I think another monitoring station is not efficient enough, I think. So we need to know what should we do and what do we want to do with the inputs of this monitoring.
I respect that deeply. People working in the policy environment, this is exactly what we're talking about, balancing. We've talked about sustainability, environmental versus economic sustainability. Things have to be paid for in a policy environment. And when we're talking about munitions clearance, we've heard this already today. The pressure that you referred to is being put on the public sector to provide the funding for this to happen. And at some point, monitoring is important, but what do you monitor? What's it going to cost? Can we afford that? And how does it relate to the results? Thank you for that. So I think this will be our final question, and then we're going to wrap up this panel.
Yeah, so my name is Peter Mentel from Corvus Works, and I will change this to two questions, if I'm allowed, yes. Sure. I have two very small questions. The first one is, we heard several times that blast in place is not an option anymore, right? I think that the EOD specialists are not doing it because they have fun blasting in place, right? I mean, first question I have is there any idea what to do instead? And the second question I have is, there are companies removing UXO from the seafloor, means construction companies, and a lot of companies are doing it. Isn't it this already an improvement of the environment? So couldn't we put or include this into the process of improving the environment by also honoring this effort that are be done by companies who are already getting UXO out of both blast in place and the improvement of the environment by companies already done?
I think there is already another way instead of blast in place, and it has already been done. The remediation of ammunition is already been done. If you look at Schleswig-Holstein, I think the last blast in place operations there, planned blast in place due to pre-safe action, was in the last 5 years one time. And the rest of the ammunition is normally defused or it is remediated and brought to another facility which can burn the ammunition so it's out of the water. So this is maybe one way that can be done. And it is also for the second phase of the immediate program of the federal government, the development of a burning facility which is mobile and can be used in any other dumping area. So burning the ammunition is, I think, a quite environmental friendly way to solve this problem.
If there was a representative of ThyssenKrupp Marine Systems here with their platform, I'm sure they would have some suggestions on dealing with that as well, because I think that's kind of built into the concept there. I don't know. I mean, not blast in place as in blast it up and blast it in the water and see what happens to it, but to contain the blast on top of the stage. But anyway, go ahead, Anita.
Yeah, just to add, so when the munition is found in coastal waters and not far from the shore, then that's the easiest method, and it can be transported. Then it's the best to bring it on land and incinerate it in Munster or in one of the other places. But not every country has such an incineration facility. I know that the Dutch, they bring their bombs across the border to Belgium because Belgium has such an incineration facility. And then we build all the offshore wind farms in the EEZ, so outside the 12 nautical miles. And there we don't have the option yet to incinerate it with a mobile platform. We hope that that is possible in the future, and in the meantime, there would be an option to do the wet storage. You have seen in the presentation of Wolfgang Sichermann that there the munition was sorted and put into a wet storage. We think that it could be done also in the EEZ. At certain places, we would have the wet storage, and then the companies do not need to blow up the munition that they find there. And at the moment, that's happening, and if it's close to nature protection areas, the bubble curtain is requested, but wet storage would be an option. But also the legislation for it needs to be there, because there are, again, security issues associated with it.
Okay, we have exactly 6 minutes left for this panel. Go ahead, Jacek.
Just a short statement. So regarding the alternatives to the blasting place, well, there are mobile destruction chambers, and I've seen Thomas from Dynasafe together with us, so they are producing such chambers from some time. And regarding your question whether the removal of munitions should be included as improvement of environment by the company who is doing that, in my opinion, and I'm not the legislator at all, of course, it's like you are removing the point source of contamination, even if it's not the critically dangerous source of contamination, you are improving the situation in the Baltic. So when they are calculating this environmental damage like carbon footprint and so on, I think this should be counted in positive. You have improved a situation to some degree.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll try to get one more question in. Yeah, Elise, go ahead.
Well, I would like to add something to the question. My name is Ad van Riel, Ria Zero. I'm from the Netherlands. We have a program going on at the moment to do the ammunition neutralization. We're working on an M3 facility. That means it's modular, it's mobile, and it's the munition neutralization, which means that we bring back, let's say, all components, including the explosives, back in economy. It means that we will bring the explosives from high energetic to low energetic, in which we can reuse it in economy as an energizer. So not to burn it, not to dispose of it, etc. And I'm 45 years working in this business, also in EUD. And bear in mind, you need blow in place as we know it, and as it is referred to here, still. And I think it's the EUD community which is, let's say, in the front line to decide whether they can get it out without blowing in place. We know how to do it. We know how to deal with it. And you can't say for environmental reason you can't do it anymore, because I don't know who's going to render it safe. So we still have to work together, cooperate, and see that we do the utmost best. So also to check for environment, because it's very important. It's also for the next generation, but it's not excluding blowing in place 100%.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that comment. And that is the beauty of this of a conference like this, where you have representatives from industry who are bringing technical solutions into play. That that we're here to network. When we get around to the networking part, I'm sure there'll be a lot of exchange of valuable contacts going on. Was there? I think we can slip in a final question if we can keep it brief.
A very, very last question. So Jens Greinert from Geomar. Anita, I think we talked about this several times. I mean, you can have bubble curtains and double bubble curtains, but first they cost a lot of time. They release a lot of CO2 into the atmosphere, and they are potentially also not really environmentally friendly because these compressors make a lot of noise, so you have this effect on the environment. So did you really do a balanced evaluation? So what is the pros and cons of blowing something up? And then it's gone, as Eddie said, all the explosives are gone. One big boom against something constantly releasing stuff, particularly when you cannot remove it. Did you do this? Did you really, at the end of the day, I always ask the question, how much are you willing to pay for one porpoise?
Thank you.
Thank you, Jens, for this question. So first, we have to distinguish between modern munition and these 80 years old munition. So the picture that I showed in the beginning from Eddie Marza, this is the case for the old munition, so that it's not completely destroyed when it's exploded. Modern munition is different, that explodes better and up to 100%. Then the bubble curtain, yeah, it's expensive, but still this blow, this is very heavy, up to 8 kilometers. So I'm not an expert in these noise details, but we have a federal state working group, and within that we have developed guidelines for nature protection services, so how munition should be handled, and these guidelines, they clearly state how much noise, which kind of explosion is creating, and in which cases this bubble curtain or even double bubble curtain should be used. Yeah, and we don't have so many harbor porpoises left. They have also other threats like contamination in the environment. So when we destroy their hearing, they cannot find their food anymore, and we extinct them from our waters. So that's not what we want. Okay. So for single objects that need to be exploded, very big mines, I think we should use the bubble curtain and explode those, but all the others, if it's possible, should be removed and incinerated. Or we heard about the Dutch methodology, so I'm interested in this methodology to see. We just have to we do not have to rely just on one methodology. If there are others, we should apply those as well.
When it comes to doing cost-benefit analyses, understanding what resources are at our disposal technically becomes hugely important, what the options are, and there are new options coming on the table as we can hear. Great. We're going to have to leave it there. I really appreciate your input on our panel from all three of you, and thanks also for the great questions and sticking with us. We're going to transition now to some tech innovation presentations now, which my esteemed colleague Alex Valenti will lead. A warm round of applause for our three panelists. Thank you.